Hey everyone, how y'all doing today? Hey, this is Norman McFadden. I come to you every Monday with a different story. And today, my story is going to come out of Urban Legends of Lincoln County, Missouri 1. And before I start the story, I'd like to tell you some details on it. You know, everybody thinks of witches. They think of, oh, these old ugly witches with pointed hats and just horrible looking witches. That's not true. That's not what witches are. There are a lot of witches in Lincoln County. Matter of fact, when I was writing for the paper, they had a witches reunion in Silex. And Silex let them have it, a big old witches reunion. And it was a great big all over Main Street. So I was a reporter. I had to go talk to them. And I went over there and I was talking to this one lady, and she's filled me in on some things that I didn't know. You know, witches are organized now. They're good witches and they're dark witches, white witches and dark witches. She said that she was a school teacher here in Lincoln County, but she practiced witchcraft. She said they're nurses, doctors, and that's in their membership. And she said she'd had politicians. She said, matter of fact, one of the judges here in Lincoln County was in her organization. She didn't give me no name. And she said the mayor of one of the towns here in Lincoln County practices witchcraft. So, you might have a witch living next door to you. You might have one in your family. They're not like you think. They're not out in the woods stirring, bruised up. No, they're not. They're organized. And they're out there. As a matter of fact, I wrote quite a few stories on witches. I wrote one about the Elsberry witches, which we're going to talk about here real soon, right on this video right here. And it came out in the paper. And I had a phone call from this lady. She says, I'm a witch and I'm going to put a spell on you. I'm going to curse you. I said, well, I'm a Christian. And you can put all the curses on you want, because God's got me protected. And God does, because I didn't have anything go wrong after she said that. The story today comes out of a little small town in Lincoln County called Elsberry, Missouri. I had some calls when I was writing for the paper. They said, you need to get out to Elsberry and check out the caves. All right, now that's all they told me, so I had to get a little more information. How do you get more information? It's go to the people that lives in the town. So I went to Elsberry. And I sat outside the IGA grocery store, and I sat there, and I kept asking people. And, some people, when I asked them about the caves of Elsberry, they ran. They ran from me. Like, oh, I don't want to talk to you. But I had this one old lady came up. She was really old, had snow white hair. She walked up to me and she said, I heard you need to know about the caves out here in Elsberry. I said, yes, ma'am. I would love to know about them. She said, well, I moved here about 40 years ago. And she said they were digging at that time. I don't know what they were digging for, but she said they were digging in there. And all of a sudden, everybody was running around town, said they hit an underground steam pocket, and steam just started coming out of the ground. I don't know what they hit, she said. But she said the next day they came and cleared all their equipment and they never dug again in that area. She said, I tell you what they did, sir. I said, well, ma'am, what did they do? She said, they drilled into the pits of hell and they let the devil go on this town. She said, I had the money, I would move out of this town today. She said, you want to loan me the money to get the hell out of this town? I said, no, ma'am, I don't have the money. With that, she just turned around and walked off. That kind of piqued my curiosity. You know, why would they just pack up and leave? So I said, well, I'm going to go with VFW Hall. These vets are not scared of nothing, not even the devil himself. So I drove over there and stationed myself outside the little VFW Hall door and kept asking people. A lot of people didn't want to talk to me. And here we go again. A little old lady. Now I'm talking a little lady. I bet she wasn't about 5 foot tall, maybe 4'9", something like. She was short. And she was leaned over a homemade cane. Leaned over. She walked up to me and raised her head up and she says, you want to know about the caves of Elsberry? I said, yes, ma'am, I would love to know about them. She said, well, I moved here about 30 years ago. She said, I was a young lady then. I was young, considered a lot now. I was in my 40s. And she said, I actually, at 40-year-old, had a young daughter. And she was 10-year-old. And as soon as I moved in, all my neighbors and people around here told me, they said, you know that we got a lot of witchcraft around here. She said, no, I didn't know that. She said, oh yeah. They said, oh yeah. If you go out to the caves, just a little bit out of town here, every Friday night they have a big get together. It is a big one. And nobody stops them. She said, even the mayor got something to do with it. She said, well, curiosity killed the cat, sir, so I went out there. I couldn't stay away. It came Friday night. I grabbed my camera, went out there. I pulled up to the cave that you had to walk across the railroad track to get to them. And I pulled up at the cave. It looked like they was having a big family reunion. They were cars here, there, everywhere, all over the place. So I grabbed my camera, hiked up across the railroad tracks and down to where the cave was, where everybody was standing at the mouth of the cave. I pushed myself up in the cave a little bit. And it was big enough to drive a car up in. She said, you could drive a car up in them caves. They're so big. And she said, I got up in there and she said, everybody was dressed in these hooded white robes. She said, so I started taking a few pictures here and there, you know, kind of turned the flash off so they couldn't see it. I didn't want nobody to see me taking pictures. They might get angry at me. And she said, then all of a sudden, I looked up front of the cave. Well, it was actually back of the cave because I came in the front. And there was a guy standing back there on a big old bench. And in front of him was a bigger bench. And he had a black robe on with a hood. And he was petting the prettiest, fluffiest little white kitty you ever saw in your life. It was so cute. And I sat there for a minute, took a couple pictures of him. Then he held it up in the air with one hand like this. And everybody started yapping and yahoo and making all kinds of racket. I guess the cat was a guest of honor. But then, didn't take me long to figure out what he was the guest of honor for, because the guy laid him on the altar in front of him and took out a great old big knife. And it turns my stomach to talk about it now, all the things he did to that poor little kitty, and it was meowing. She said, I took some more pictures and I got the heck out of there. She said, I didn't think anybody seen me. But she said the strange thing happened that week. She had the film developed. None of the pictures turned out. Not a one. And she started having tears come out of her eyes. She was crying. And she said something else happened. I said, what was that, man? She broke my heart. She said, them people put curses on my family. She said, my little 10-year-old girl, she died that week. The doctor said there was no reason for her to die, that there wasn't nothing wrong with her. I know what was wrong with her. Them people put curses on her, and she took her hanky out, her white hanky out of her purse, and bent over and wiped her eyes. But she couldn't wipe them fast enough. Tears was running down her cheek. She said, sir, stay away from them caves. Stay away from them people. This is not a good town. This is not a good place. She said, I can't leave. I ain't got the money. She said, my husband died that year too. I'm all by myself. With that, she leaned back on her cane, put her hanky back in her purse, and walked in the VFW hall. I went over. They had no trespassing signs all over the fence, so I couldn't go up where the caves was. I just took pictures from the railroad tracks, because that's public. They are some big caves there. And I said blessings. I sprinkled holy water. I said, God, if there are any evil things going on here, Lord, stop it. You alone, by the name of Jesus Christ, can put a stop to it. So as you're looking for witches this Halloween, don't look for ugly, haggy old witches. Because the one I talked to as Silex was beautiful. She was a very beautiful school teacher. She's teaching our kids. Think about it. God bless you until next time. This is Norman McFadden signing off. Go on Google and buy the book. You'll love it. Thank you very much.